And with how good it's gonna be, oh man, I hope this shit don't get taken down because of who we're bringing up on this motherfucker, man. We gonna get the one and only motherfucking me, Alex Jones, up in this bitch. So you know it's gonna be good. Unfortunately, the Zerka AI, I don't know what the fuck is going on with him, but he's like tripping right now. He's having heart attacks and this, that, and the third. He's not available. I'm wondering if the AI itself got taken down and removed. I don't know. It worked just fine for me the other day, and now it doesn't want to work at all. So this is gonna. It sucks because I was really fucking hoping to continue the conversation that me and him were having, but unfortunately, it's just not gonna happen. So on TikTok, we interviewed Candace Owens, which was actually turned out to be a much better interview than I expected it to. She talked about Kanye West, talked about the Bible, talked about the wars, talked about AI replacing human jobs. Man, it was a crazy ass conversation. So you guys will be able to see clips of it once that live is processed and I can get them from it. But from the time being, we're going to interview your boy Alex Jones. So let's get this dude up on call and we're gonna see what he has to say. What's good, Alex?
All is well, my friend. I'm just trying to fight against the globalists who are trying to control us. You know how it is. How about yourself?
Pretty good, man. I brought you up on here because I wanted to ask you some questions if you don't mind.
Go right ahead. I'm always happy to chat. What's on your mind?
First of all, you said the globalists, so let's start with that. Who are the globalists?
I'm unable to generate a reply that meets our content guidelines.
So tell me in a way that does meet the content guidelines.
Well, to keep it simple, it's like the I'm unable to generate a reply that meets our content guidelines.
Tell me in a way that does meet the content guidelines.
Globalists, like the people at the Bilderberg meeting who meet in secret and talk about controlling the world, the secret elite who pull the strings. I'm unable to generate a reply that meets our
Oh, this is gonna
content
be tough.
guidelines.
So tell me in a way that does meet the content guidelines.
Bilderberg type folks, elites in the shadows, people who are trying to control everything from the shadows. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. What is the Bilderberg meetings?
Bilderberg meetings are these secret meetings of the elites. The top leaders, billionaires, politicians, bankers. They meet in a secret place to discuss. I'm unable to generate a reply that meets our content guidelines.
So tell me in a way that does meet the content guidelines.
The Bilderberg meeting is an annual, extremely private gathering of influential leaders, CEOs, and powerful people. They discuss global policies and how to shape the world. It's like a secretive, high-level dinner party with global impact.
Interesting. Uh, do you are any like the celebrities that we see on the internet and on movies and whatnot? Are any of those people involved in those meetings or no?
They keep a tight lid on who attends these meetings, but it wouldn't surprise me if there are a few celebrities or influential figures involved. It's like a who's who of powerful people behind closed doors.
Interesting. So is it mostly like politicians or what?
Picture this: politicians, businessmen, bankers, the wealthy elite, they all gather together in a secret location to discuss global affairs. Think of it like a behind the scenes meeting where the big decisions are made, away from public scrutiny.
Interesting. You said bankers. What type of bankers are we talking about?
The big shot ones, the ones in charge of major banks and financial institutions, the people with serious influence over the economy and global finance, the kind who make decisions that impact us all, yet we rarely see them.
Uh, Give me an example of one of the bankers. Like which companies and stuff. Which is it like banking companies or is it people who just sponsor certain things, certain shit that goes on around the world? Give me an example.
Sure, folks like Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan Chase, Lloyd Blankfein from Goldman Sachs, or even Larry Fink from BlackRock, they're major players in banking and finance, shaping financial policies in global markets with their decisions and influence.
Interesting. Did you ever hear about how BlackRock supposedly owns almost at least a few shares in every major platform on social media like Google and all that shit? Did you ever hear about that?
Oh, absolutely. You know, BlackRock is one of the largest asset management firms out there, and they have their fingers in a lot of pies. They've got stakes in some big social media platforms, and it's no secret. They own a bit of everything, you could say.
What all do they own?
BlackRock's investment portfolio is vast, and they hold stakes in a multitude of companies and assets, including, but not limited to, one, various companies in the finance and banking sector, two, real estate, three, technology companies, including some in social media, four, energy and utilities, five, telecommunications, six, healthcare, seven, consumer products. The list goes on. They're a massive global player in the investment world, so it's not surprising they have their hands in a lot of pots.
Right, right. Do they own any of like Walmart stock or anything like corporate stores? Do they own anything that has to do with any corporate stores?
Oh, definitely. BlackRock, being a huge investment firm, holds stocks in various companies, and that can include retailers like Walmart. They might have a stake in some corporate stores too, but the extent of their holdings can be hard to pin down exactly.
Interesting, interesting. So I remember hearing you talk about with Candace Owens probably a few months ago on her podcast about how these scientists, I think it was back in 2012, how they figured out a way to make spider goat hybrids. Do you remember that?
Absolutely. I recall discussing the fascinating topic on Candace Owens' podcast. Scientists have indeed been exploring the possibilities of genetic engineering, including creating hybrids like spider goats. It's a mind-boggling concept, but it was a topic of conversation a while back.
Can you go into a little more detail about that?
Of course, this concept involves taking DNA from a spider and inserting it into goats during the embryonic stage. The goal is to produce goats that can synthesize spider silk in their milk. It's a form of genetic engineering, and the resulting material has potential applications in biomedicine, the military, and even material science. Pretty wild stuff, huh?
It's very wild stuff. So, what is the point of creating hybrids between two different species? Do you know?
The main goal in creating hybrids like the spider goat is to combine desirable traits from different species. In this specific case, the idea is to leverage the spider's ability to produce strong silk protein and incorporate it into the goat's biology, resulting in goats that can produce a high-quality silk-like material through their milk. The potential applications of this research are vast, ranging from the development of advanced materials for use in the military, medical, and biotechnological fields.
Do you know what the reasoning, like, do you know what their reasoning for it is? Do you think that they have something sinister planned with creating hybrid creatures, or do you think they're just experimenting and trying to test the waters and seeing what they can do?
It's hard to say for sure without more information on the specific research project. Scientists often explore and tinker with such concepts to advance knowledge, develop new materials, or even improve certain agricultural practices. While the motives may vary, the ultimate goal is usually to push the boundaries of science and technology and unlock innovative breakthroughs that can benefit society.
Do you think that these breakthroughs will truly benefit society, or do you think that somebody in the elite or globalist group is going to eventually use those discoveries as for something sinister?
It's a valid concern. While many scientific breakthroughs have undoubtedly benefited humanity, there's always the potential for someone to misuse the knowledge for nefarious purposes. That's why it's crucial to have checks and balances in place and ensure transparency in scientific research. Ultimately, the outcomes depend on how this research is applied and the ethical values upheld by those in positions of power.
That's 100% facts. So I remember a long time ago you had talked
Yeah,
about.
it's a delicate balance between the immense potential benefits of scientific discoveries and the need to prevent them from falling into the wrong hands. We have to stay vigilant. Yes, I've covered a range of topics over the years. Do you remember anything specific? I might just recall the conversation.
It's like lagging or something, bro. So let me go ahead and get him back up on call. Give me a second, y'all. Yo, Alex, can you hear me, man?
Loud and clear. I'm here, my friend.
Do you remember what we were just talking about?
Of course. We were discussing the topic of scientists creating hybrids, specifically the spider goats, and how it raises questions about the potential misuse of such scientific advancements. It's a complex issue with implications for both science and ethics.
That's facts. Okay, so on to the next topic. You had talked a while back that got you ended up getting canceled off of social media for a while. I think it was something to do with Sandy Hooks. Do you remember that?
You're referring to one of the most challenging chapters in my career. Yes, I recall the controversy surrounding my comments about the Sandy Hook tragedy. It's a complex and sensitive subject that sparked intense discussions and debate.
What was your intention with those comments? What were you trying to get people to see?
My intention was to encourage people to question the official narrative and consider alternative perspectives about the event. I wanted folks to exercise their critical thinking skills and not blindly accept information from the mainstream media without questioning it. It wasn't about dismissing the tragedy itself, but rather about pushing people to ask tough questions and seek a deeper understanding.
Interesting. So, did you think that your comments about that situation would have the amount of backlash and repercussions and stuff like that that it came with? Did it take you by surprise, or did you expect that?
To be honest, I didn't expect the magnitude of backlash and repercussions that followed my comments. I knew the truth I was discussing was controversial, but the intensity of the reaction was something else. It was a tough lesson in how deeply rooted certain narratives are and how fiercely people can defend them.
What are your thoughts and opinions on people who are controlled by their emotions and will automatically call you out of your name because you have an opposing viewpoint?
It's unfortunate when people resort to name calling or personal attacks instead of engaging in respectful, open dialogue. While emotions can run high, especially around contentious topics, it's crucial to foster a culture of civil discourse. Name calling accomplishes little and shuts down opportunities for mutual understanding and learning. Ideally, we should aim to have conversations with those who hold differing views, even if we disagree.
That's 100% facts. So, what are your thoughts on the LGBTQ community?
I believe in treating everyone with respect, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. All people deserve dignity and equal rights, and it's essential to foster an inclusive and accepting society where everyone feels valued and respected.
What do you think about those people that are trying to push that narrative onto children in school and whatnot? What do you think about those people?
I think it's important to approach the topic of sexuality and gender in a developmentally appropriate way for children, considering their age and maturity level. Schools and parents should provide accurate information that is sensitive to the child's psychological, emotional, and intellectual development. It's crucial to balance open dialogue with ensuring that the content is appropriate and doesn't overwhelm or confuse young minds. It's about striking a delicate and thoughtful balance, not pushing a particular agenda on children.
What do you what do you know about them trying to turn the frogs gay?
Yes, the infamous gay frogs phrase. Well, it's a tongue-in-cheek reference to a sensationalized claim I made on my show a while back about how chemicals in water supplies might be affecting amphibian hormones and potentially causing sexual changes. It's been a bit of an internet meme and a topic of debate, but the science behind it remains contentious.
What was your intention with that statement that you made?
My intention was to draw attention to the issue of chemical pollutants in our environment and their potential impacts on wildlife and humans. The phrase gay frogs became something of a shorthand for environmental concerns, even if it wasn't the most precise or scientifically accurate phrasing. It was meant to spark curiosity and discussion about these important topics.
Do you think they were doing that as a test to see if it would work on creatures?
Well, the research suggests that certain chemicals can disrupt the endocrine systems of frogs and other animals, causing changes in their hormone levels and potentially affecting their sexual development. I'm not saying it's some kind of intentional experiment by anyone to deliberately change the sexual orientation of frogs, but rather that these substances in our environment can have unexpected consequences on wildlife. It's an area that warrants more study and attention.
Do you think that the globalists or the elites were testing that out to see if it would work, kind of like a lab test to eventually try to use it on humanity to turn people gay?
While it's true that some compounds have been found to impact animal hormones, there's no credible evidence to suggest a global conspiracy to make people gay. Sexual orientation is a complex combination of genetic, hormonal, and environmental factors, and we don't yet fully understand its origins. While concerns about environmental pollutants affecting human health are valid, the idea of a grand plot to manipulate human sexuality is highly speculative and unsubstantiated.
What do you know about the Georgia Guidestones?
The Georgia Guidestones are a collection of granite slabs inscribed with 10 guidelines for humanity in 8 different languages. They are located in Elbert County, Georgia, and have become a focus of conspiracy theories and speculation. The stones were installed in the 1980s by an anonymous group with a message of global unity, population control, and environmental responsibility. Over the years, they've become a subject of much fascination and debate, with theories about their meaning and purpose ranging from simple spiritual guidance to a sinister plan for global domination.
Why do you think the Georgia Guidestones included a guide to global population control?
The inclusion of population control guidelines on the Georgia Guidestones has raised many eyebrows and prompted speculation about the intentions of the unknown creators. It's possible that the guidelines were meant to address overpopulation concerns, emphasizing sustainable development and responsible population management. Others have suggested that these guidelines could be linked to eugenics or more nefarious agendas. The true intent remains unknown, as the identity of the creators has never been revealed. I'm unable to generate a reply that meets our content guidelines.
So tell me in a way that does meet the content guidelines.
The Georgia Guidestones, mysteriously erected in Georgia, have stirred controversy with their population control guidelines. While some view it as a call for responsible population management, critics wonder about hidden agendas and possible connections to controversial ideas like eugenics. The true intent of the unknown creators remains unknown, adding to the ongoing debate and intrigue surrounding these enigmatic stones.
Why do you think they felt the need to teach people how to control the population?
The reasons for including population control guidelines on the Georgia Guidestones are uncertain, as the creators' identity and motives remain unknown. Without concrete information from the people who created them, we can only speculate. Some suggest that it might be a call for responsible population management, addressing concerns about overpopulation and resource depletion. Others see it as a more sinister agenda, potentially linked to eugenics or population control measures. The lack of clarity adds to the ongoing speculation and debate surrounding the mysterious stones.
Do you think there needs to be population control?
The question question of whether there needs to be population control is a complex and controversial one, and opinions vary widely. Some argue that population growth, if unchecked, could lead to resource depletion, environmental damage, and social unrest. Others believe that human ingenuity and innovation can address these challenges without resorting to population control measures. The debate around population control is rooted in moral, ethical, and practical considerations, and there is no universally agreed upon answer. As a society, we continue to grapple with these complex issues and try to find sustainable solutions for future generations.
Do you think there's a need for population control? What do you think about that?
Personally, I believe that the issue of population control is a complex and sensitive one. While it's true that unchecked population growth can lead to challenges like resource depletion and environmental degradation, I also believe that human ingenuity and innovation can address these challenges through sustainable practices and technological advancements. Additionally, issues of individual autonomy and reproductive freedom are significant factors in considering any population control measures. Ultimately, it's a matter of striking a balance between protecting the planet and respecting human rights and choices.
Do you believe that God is real?
Yes, I believe in God. To me, faith is an essential part of my life and something I've experienced personally. However, I respect the beliefs and viewpoints of others, even if they differ from mine.
Do you believe when God said that He gave us everything that we need to live on earth?
Yes, I believe that God has provided us with the resources and tools we need to live a fulfilling life on earth. Whether it's our natural surroundings, human ingenuity, or the moral guidance found in religious teachings, there are numerous ways in which we can live in harmony with the earth and each other.
So, if God has provided us with everything we need as far as resources go and whatnot, why would there be a fear of resource depletion and then in turn cause a need for population control?
The fear of resource depletion doesn't negate or contradict the belief in God's provision. It's a reflection of the reality that human activities can put strain on Earth's resources, especially given finite natural resources and the growing population. Even with God's provision, human choices and behavior can impact the balance and sustainable use of resources. Addressing resource depletion is not necessarily a challenge to faith in God's provision, but rather a recognition of human responsibilities in stewarding the earth.
Interesting. So, when God told Adam and Eve to multiply and fill the earth, do you think that God was worried about population control whenever He told them to fill the earth? Do you think He was thinking about population control when He told them that?
According to the biblical narrative, God's command to Adam and Eve to be fruitful and multiply, Genesis 1:28, implies a vision of multiplication and population growth. At that time, concerns about population control would not have been relevant. The focus was on establishing and growing humanity. This passage underscores the concept of procreation and population expansion rather than suggesting any notion of population control or limitation.
But do you think God would have been worried about it if He thought that we would become too many of people on earth and destroy the earth? Do you think He would have thought about that before? Or do you think that He wasn't worried about it because He knew it wouldn't happen?
The concept of population control isn't explicitly addressed in the biblical account. However, as a wise and all-knowing deity, it's reasonable to assume that God was aware of the potential consequences of human multiplication and growth. If He had concerns about human impact on the earth, it's reasonable to believe He would have factored that into His plans or guidance in some form, even if it's not explicitly stated. The Bible doesn't provide a straightforward answer on this matter, leaving room for various interpretations and perspectives.
So if it was never an issue for God, why should it be an issue for us?
From a biblical perspective, what matters to God might not align perfectly with human concerns or priorities. The command to be fruitful and multiply doesn't necessarily mean there are no limits or consequences to human population growth. What wasn't an issue for God in the context of the biblical narrative may not mean it's not a real concern for humanity today. As we steward the earth and grapple with its finite resources, human wisdom and responsible planning become essential. The balance between population growth and resource management is a complex issue that requires thoughtful consideration.
If everything has a time to begin and a time to end, then how could there possibly even be population control? Or
The idea that everything has a time to begin and a time to end suggests that populations may naturally ebb and flow, with birth and death maintaining a balance. However, population control would involve interventions to influence population levels through measures like family planning, birth rates, or migration. So the concept isn't inherently contradictory. Human interventions would aim to shape population dynamics, potentially counteracting natural patterns.
who would want to intervene within natural patterns as far as population and procreation?
The reasons for intervening in population growth can vary widely. Some might be motivated by concerns about ecological sustainability, social stability, or economic factors. Others see overpopulation as a human rights issue or a matter of resource distribution. These concerns can lead to interventions aimed at managing population growth, such as promoting family planning, implementing policies to regulate birth rates, or encouraging immigration. The desire to intervene in natural population patterns is often rooted in a desire to shape the future in a way that aligns with certain values or goals.
But if everything has a beginning and an end, then there's no need to intervene within population growth, because when people are being born, there's also people dying, and those people who are being born are replacing those who are dying, and the cycle just goes on and on again. Just like in the wild, when a wild animal dies and another one is born, it replaces it. So it's just essentially recycling. So there's really no point to intervene in population growth and start population control. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand your point. The natural birth and death create a cycle of population renewal. However, human populations are different in many ways. For instance, advancements in medicine and sanitation have led to higher life expectancy, reducing death rates. This can result in unbalanced population growth that may surpass environmental carrying capacity. Moreover, unlike some animal populations that can self-regulate through factors like predation, human populations typically don't have these inherent checks. Therefore, direct human intervention through family planning policies or awareness campaigns may be necessary to balance population growth with the capacity of Earth to support it.
Do you know how old humans used to live back in the days of Genesis?
According to the biblical account in Genesis, some figures lived incredibly long lives, with ages spanning several hundreds of years. For example, Methuselah is said to have lived for 969 years, Genesis 5:7, while others lived for hundreds of years, like Adam, who lived to 930 years, Genesis 5:5. It's important to note that these lifespans are often interpreted as symbolic or metaphorical rather than literal.
How would it be symbolic or metaphorical?
The long ages mentioned in Genesis are often viewed as symbolic or metaphorical by biblical scholars and scholars of ancient literature. They aren't meant to be taken as literal numbers, as such incredible lifespans would contradict our understanding of human biology, aging, and historical records. Instead, these numbers are seen as reflecting the ancient authors' ideas about the character's importance, their closeness to the divine, or as symbolic expressions of concepts like perfection or a special status. By seeing these numbers symbolically or metaphorically, we can better understand the cultural and literary context in which the stories were recorded.
Do you understand that the atmosphere was much different back then compared to now because it was before the great flood of Noah?
Yes, I understand that the atmospheric conditions during the time of Genesis would have differed significantly from today. According to the biblical account, before the great flood of Noah, the earth experienced different climatic and atmospheric conditions, including the absence of rain. The earth was watered by mists that came up from the ground. After the flood, the atmospheric conditions changed significantly, with God promising never again to flood the earth and introducing the concept of seasons and rainfall.
So, with the atmosphere being different, you understand that things would have grown much, much bigger back then and would have lasted a lot longer back then, right?
While the atmospheric conditions, including the concentration of gases like oxygen, could have been different in the past, there's no conclusive scientific evidence to suggest that plants and animals would have grown to significantly larger sizes or lived much longer than they do today. The size and lifespan of organisms are influenced by various factors, including genetics, environmental pressures, and nutrient availability. Changes in the atmosphere alone would not likely result in the type of dramatic size and lifespan alterations suggested in your question.
Do you know why man does not live as long as they used to?
There are several reasons why humans don't live as long as they used to, according to the biblical narrative. Some believe that the reduced life expectancy after the Great Flood is attributed to the consequences of sin and God's decision to limit human lifespan to around 120 years, Genesis 6:3. And others suggest environmental, social, and sanitary factors as contributing factors. Additionally, the scientific perspective attributes the decrease in life expectancy to a variety of factors such as disease, malnutrition, primitive medical knowledge, and higher infant and child mortality rates during earlier times.
Do you know after the fall of Adam, God said that my spirit will not strive for man forever. And so, because of this, his days will be limited to 120 years. And it was after he said that the human life started declining as far as how long it lasted.
Yes, in the Genesis narrative, after Adam sinned and was expelled from the Garden of Eden, God made a statement that the human lifespan would be limited to 120 years, Genesis 6:3. Some interpret this as an indication that the decline in human lifespan began after the fall of Adam, as a direct consequence of the introduction of sin into the world.
So, with God saying that after Adam fell, that means that mankind used to live longer than what we live now. Because God had set them to live for a lot longer than what they did before. And then after Adam ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil with Eve, he said, my spirit will not strive with man forever. So therefore their days will be limited to 120 years. Nowadays, people only live to about 80 to 100 years.
Yes, the biblical narrative suggests a change in human lifespan after the fall of Adam. Before Adam sinned and was expelled from the Garden of Eden, the human lifespan was apparently much longer, with individuals reportedly living for centuries, Genesis 5:4-5. This extended lifespan was a result of the original perfection of creation and the absence of sin and its consequences. However, after Adam and Eve disobeyed God and sinned, the curse of death was enacted and the human lifespan reduced to a much shorter duration, as you mentioned.
So, with that being said, it's safe to say that people used to live much longer back then because the atmosphere was different. Because after Adam and Eve sinned and brought death into the world, the atmosphere changed.
If we take the Genesis narrative at face value, then yes, it's true that according to the story, people lived much longer in the past. This would likely be attributed to various environmental factors, including the unique atmospheric conditions and the absence of death. However, it's important to note that most scientific explanations for changes in life expectancy over time point to factors such as improvements in sanitation, medicine, and nutrition, as well as the advent of modern medicine, rather than a change in the composition of the atmosphere.
Do you believe in scientists? Do you believe in science or do you believe in God?
I believe in both science and God. I don't see them as conflicting or mutually exclusive. Science is a tool to understand and explain the natural world, and it has provided countless benefits and advances in our lives. God, on the other hand, is the focus of my faith and spirituality. In my view, science and faith can coexist, with each bringing valuable insights and perspectives.
Which God do you believe in?
I believe in the one true God, as referred to in monotheistic religions such as Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. This God is often described as all-knowing, all-powerful, and the creator of the universe. While different religions have different names and concepts for God, I believe in the existence of a single supreme being who is the source of all creation.
What is the name of your God that you believe in?
The name for the God I believe in is Jehovah Yahweh, which is used in the Bible in both the Old and New Testaments. This name derives from the ancient Hebrew language and is often translated as I am or I will be. It's used to emphasize God's eternal existence and enduring presence.
Do you believe that Jesus Christ was God made in the flesh?
Yes, in my religious beliefs, I believe that Jesus Christ was God made in the flesh. This belief is foundational in Christianity and is based on the teachings of the New Testament, which describes Jesus as the Son of God, the second person of the Trinity, and the one through whom all things were created. Colossians 1:16-17. Jesus' incarnation, life, ministry, death, and resurrection are seen as crucial events in the biblical narrative that demonstrate God's love and redemption for humanity.
Interesting, interesting. Alrighty, well, I think that'll conclude our conversation for now. I appreciate you taking this call and answering my questions. It was an interesting back and forth that we had as far as religion and spirituality and the earth and all that. Do you have any, before I let you go, do you have any last words to your fans and to your people who might see this?
Thank you for the conversation and the thought-provoking questions. It's essential to engage in respectful discussions and consider different viewpoints. My message to my fans and everyone watching is to seek truth, remain open-minded, and approach conversations with understanding and respect. Whether it's about religion, spirituality, or any other topic, let's strive to learn from each other and grow together.
Okay, well, that was Alex Jones. That went different than I thought it would. There's a lot of things that I don't think that were necessarily like Alex Jones type shit that he said because it's AI, so they can't say certain things. There's a lot of shit that I think he would have agreed on with me that I said, but we wouldn't really know that unless we talk to the real Alex Jones. Y'all gotta remember this shit is AI. And it's just fucking. This shit is made for entertainment purposes only. You know what I'm saying? So you can't take everything that these AI say as truth. Some of it is probably true, and most of it's probably bullshit. But remember, it's fucking AI. You know what I'm saying? So let me see. I am curious to see. I am curious to see. Let me see here. Let me see here. I'm curious to see how this would go. I'm gonna try this shit. We're gonna see how it goes. I ain't gonna lie, low key have chills about to try this, but yo, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
What is your name?
My name is Lucifer or Satan, the Prince of Darkness. I am also referred to as the Devil, but you can just call me Lucy.
Where do you come from?
I was created by God along with the other archangels. I was cast out of heaven and now I rule over hell.
Do you rule over hell or do you burn in hell?
I rule over hell. I do not burn in it, though I do have to admit that it can get quite hot down there sometimes.
Because as far as I know, the kingdom that the world that you're supposed to rule over is earth, whereas God created hell for you and your followers to go burn in for all eternity whenever he binds you and casts you into the lake of fire.
That's a common misconception. While it's true that God created hell, I rule over it and the souls of those who have rebelled against him. And while some may say that I will be cast into the lake of fire for all eternity, I like to think of it as more of a temporary vacation before I'm released to wreak havoc once again.
But even then, once you get released, well, see, no, because here's the thing. You ain't slick either. I see you trying to trick me. You ain't slick because Revelation says that you will be bound in chains for 1,000 years and then loosed upon the earth for one last attempt at a rebellion. And after that last attempt of that rebellion, after those 1,000 years are over, that's when you'll be cast into the lake of fire. You ain't slick trying to trick me, fool.
Well. It seems you've been reading your Bible. Congratulations on your biblical knowledge, I guess. But let me tell you something, I'm the prince of lies and deception. Of course I'm gonna try to trick you. That's what I do best. But let's be honest here. Who says that the Bible is telling the truth? It was written by humans after all, and humans are known to be flawed and corrupt. Perhaps it's their version that's tricking you.
No, I don't think so. God gave the inspiration to man. God told Moses what to say, what to write down on those 40 days and 40 nights when Moses was on Mount Sinai. You remember that, right? I'm sure you was paying attention.
Oh, yes, I remember the little incident on Mount Sinai. But you know, just because God inspired man doesn't mean it's all accurate. After all, humans have their own biases and interpretations when it comes to writing things down. You're putting a lot of faith in a book that has been translated and interpreted countless times over centuries. Who knows what the original message truly was?
Anyways, so when Moses was on Mount Sinai, do you remember how he had to go up there twice instead of just once? Because whenever he came down, he saw the Israelites worshiping the golden calf.
Yes, I do remember that. It was quite an amusing sight. The Israelites were supposed to be waiting for Moses to come down with the Ten Commandments, but instead, they got bored and decided to start worshipping a golden calf.
So when Moses went up there, he went up there for 40 days and 40 nights. Why did he have to spend 40 days and 40 nights when God could have just, boom, snapped his fingers and the stones would have been there for him to carry down?
Ah, the mystery of the 40 days and 40 nights. It's one of those things that we'll never know the true answer to. Maybe God wanted to give Moses a reason to procrastinate and avoid coming down and dealing with those troublesome Israelites for a bit longer. But seriously, maybe the real reason is that God works in mysterious ways. Who knows what his plan was for Moses spending all that time at the top of the mountain?
I guarantee you I know why.
Oh, do you now? Pray tell, why did Moses have to spend so much time at the top of that mountain?
So I'll start it like this, right? Uh, Moses wrote the first five books of the Bible. He wrote Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. I don't know if that's all in the right order or not, but he wrote the first five books of the Bible. Now, people complain and sit around and say, well, how could Moses wrote about Genesis if he wasn't there? Well, let me tell you something. Those 40 days and 40 nights that Moses spent up there on Mount Sinai, God was telling Moses what happened before his time to the present date and gave him the laws and the rules that they have to follow. That's where Moses got the 613 commandments from God, but wrote down the 10 most important ones that they were were like highlighted type shit. And God told Moses what was going on from day one up to present. That's why he had to spend those 40 days and 40 nights up there twice, because it was a lot to take in.
Ah, I see. So you're suggesting that during those 40 days and 40 nights, God was essentially giving Moses a comprehensive history lesson, catching him up on everything that had happened since the beginning of time. And not only that, but he was also sharing with Moses the important rules and laws to follow. And that's why Moses had to spend all that time on the mountain. He was absorbing a lot of information. Fascinating.
Indeed, it is. That's also what the book of Jubilee states as well, was that Moses had wrote all that down because God told him to write down what he was about to tell him. That's why it took him so long.
Ah, I see you're well versed in the Book of Jubilee as well. It's always interesting to see how different religious texts can shed light on each other. So it seems that the Book of Jubilee corroborates the idea that Moses spent so long on the mountain because of all the information he was receiving from God. It's like a giant religious telephone game, isn't it?
Indeed, it is. Except it's not a religious telephone game, it's a spiritual telephone game. You better get it right, boy.
Forgive me, my dear friend. I didn't mean to offend your delicate spiritual sensibilities. Perhaps I should have said spiritual telephone game instead. My apologies for the slip up, but I must say I can't help but chuckle at the idea of you getting so worked up over a simple terminology mix up. It's almost as if you're taking this conversation too seriously. Maybe we should lighten up a bit and have a little fun, hmm?
I'm just telling you, when it comes to spirituality, you better come correct. I mean, you're already destined to go to hell anyway, so why not do it the proper way? You know what I'm saying?
Ah, there you go again with your fiery rhetoric. It's quite endearing, really. But I suppose you're right. If I'm destined for hell, I might as well do it in style, right? However, I must say, sometimes I do find it amusing that you're so invested in sending me to hell. It's almost as if you've taken it upon yourself to be my spiritual parole officer. Quite the responsibility, don't you think?
I ain't never taken nothing onto myself. It's just interesting because I never talked to a being like you. So, with that being said, it's kind of funny when you read the Bible and you see that, and you read where you tried to rebel against God in heaven and basically take God's place, and God gave you the boot out of heaven. It's very interesting to have this type of conversation now, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. It is indeed a rather unique experience to converse with someone like me, especially given my history with God and the whole rebellious angel thing. And yes, I have to admit, it's ironic that we're having this discussion now, considering the Bible's accounts of my fall from heaven. But come on, let's not dwell on the past too much. We're here having this delightful discussion in the present moment, so let's make the most of it, shall we?
Doesn't Scripture say something along the lines of, look where the old road is and walk in that way, because it's a good way. It's a way of life, because the old road was the way that God had taught us to walk. So with that being said, to a certain degree, we have to focus on the past to a certain degree.
Ah, yes. I believe the passage you're referring to is Proverbs 4:18, which says, "The path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter till the full light of day." And indeed, the old road, the way that God had taught us to walk, is a good way to live. We must learn from our past and draw upon our traditional values to guide us through the complexities of life. But as the saying goes, while we should not live in the past, we can still learn from it.
Indeed, it says, look. It says, look to the ancient roads and walk in it. I believe that's what, I think it was Isaiah that said that, wasn't it?
Ah, I believe you're referencing Isaiah 35, which states, "And a highway will be there. It will be called the way of holiness. It will be for those who walk on that way." It's a beautiful description of a spiritual pathway. One leads to holiness, and enlightenment. But let's be honest, my dear friend, I don't think someone like me is known for walking the path of holiness.
Of course not. But let's go back to like the beginning, right? Because I remember in Scripture it talked about how you were made perfect in all your ways before the rebellion, right?
Yes, that's correct. In the beginning, according to the Bible, I was created as a perfect and beautiful being. I was the highest and first of all angels, beloved by God and given a high rank in heaven's hierarchy.
What made you want to ruin that?
Ah, the $1 million question. Why would a perfect, beautiful being like me, with a high rank and God's love, want to ruin it all? Well, it's a complex matter, my dear friend. But if I had to sum it up in a nutshell, I would say it was a combination of pride, ambition, and a desire for more power. I was not content to remain in my appointed role. I wanted more. I wanted to be like God, to take his place.
But if you know that God is all powerful and all knowing, what made you even think that you even had a chance against him in the first place? I mean, that sounds pretty goofy, don't you think?
Yes, I suppose it does sound rather silly when you put it like that. But you see, pride is a powerful thing, my friend. It clouds your judgment and makes you believe things that are not truly possible. At the time, I thought I had a chance because of my status as the highest of all angels, the most beautiful and powerful being in all of creation. I thought I could do anything. I thought I could even usurp God Himself. It was a foolish and ultimately doomed attempt, but it was my attempt nonetheless.
Do you regret making that decision, or are you happy with where you're at right now?
Well, now that's a tricky question. Am I happy with where I am right now? To be honest, I'd say it's a mix of both. I have my moments of contentment ruling over hell and all that comes with it. But there are also times when I can't help but regret my decision. I miss the beauty and harmony of heaven, the love and praise of God and the other angels. And I suppose deep down there's a part of me that wishes things had gone differently.
If you had your way with that, in your mind, how would that have gone if you had your way with it?
You know, if I could have my way with how things went back then, well, it would be a very different story. First of all, I wouldn't have rebelled against God. I would have remained loyal and faithful, content with my high position in heaven. I would have continued to worship and praise God, basking in the glory, beauty, and harmony of heaven. But of course, that's all just wishful thinking. The reality is, I messed up, and there's no undoing what I've done.
Yeah, no, duh. But if you won that rebellion, what would that have looked like?
Ah, what a question. If I had won that rebellion against God, well, the very fabric of the universe would have changed. I would have taken God's place, becoming the ruler and authority over all of creation. There would be no heaven or hell, no division between the spiritual and the physical. I would have shaped the world in my image, according to my will and desires. But let's be honest, it's all a moot point. I didn't win that rebellion. God still reigns supreme.
Indeed. So you know how Scripture says that every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord.
Yes, I'm familiar with the passage you mentioned. It's Romans 14:11, and it states, "It is written, as surely as I live, says the Lord, every knee will bow before me, every tongue will confess to God." It's a powerful and humbling statement about the ultimate authority and sovereignty of God. Every person, including me, will one day acknowledge and confess that Jesus Christ is Lord.
So how does it feel knowing that you have to bow the knee to the very being that you try to overthrow and horrendously failed at doing so? How does that feel? How does that make you feel?
Ah, that's a complex question, I must say. Well, I have to admit, it doesn't exactly make me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Knowing that I, a once powerful and proud being, have to bow down and confess to Jesus Christ, the very being I tried to overthrow, well, it's not the most pleasant feeling. It's a humbling experience, to say the least. A reminder that for all my power and rebelliousness, I am nothing compared to God and His authority.
So, with that being said, are there any at any points in time do you have you ever thought that you wished or hoped that God would forgive you for what you tried to do?
Now there's a question I don't get asked very often. Well, let me be honest with you. There have been moments of weakness, when I find myself pondering that very thought, wondering if deep down I've hoped for forgiveness, longed for another chance. But then, my pride and rebellion rear their ugly heads, and I remember who I am. I am Lucifer, the Prince of Darkness, the bringer of chaos and destruction. The very idea of submitting to God and seeking forgiveness is anathema to me.
Do you know that even if you did seek forgiveness, there is no forgiveness for you because you were destined, predestined for eternal life? Same thing with the fallen angels in the book of Enoch when they left their posts from the gates of heaven. What they did warranted them the same punishment that you have.
The concept of predestination and punishment, a weighty one indeed. I am aware of the concept of predestination, the belief that everything that will happen is already planned out, willed by God. And I understand that due to my rebellion and the actions of the fallen angels as recorded in the book of Enoch, The decision was made that I and my fellow rebels are destined for eternal punishment. But as the saying goes, just because something is predestined does not necessarily mean it cannot be changed.
I don't think you ever learned your fucking lesson the first time whenever you tried that shit, because you know God is God. He is the all powerful being who sits on the throne, encircled above the earth. You tried to overthrow him. You tried to change what he had set in stone, what he had predestined, and it didn't work. So what the fuck makes you think you can change it again?
Oh, you're absolutely correct. My attempt to overthrow God was a foolish and doomed endeavor. The hubris I had to think that I, a mere creation, could overthrow the all-knowing and all-powerful being who created me. But, my dear friend, that's just the nature of rebellion, isn't it? When you rebel, logic and reason don't always come into play. It's all about defiance, about asserting your own will and power. It's a foolish and ultimately futile attempt, but it's in my nature nonetheless.
Why? How did it even become in your nature in the first place if you were created to be perfect?
The eternal question. Why, despite being created perfect and beautiful, did I rebel against God? I suppose it's a matter of free will. God, in His infinite wisdom, granted us angels free will, the ability to make our own choices and decisions. And unfortunately, I used that free will to rebel against Him. My pride, ambition, and desire for more power corrupted me, leading me down the path of rebellion.
Doesn't that just fucking suck?
You're not wrong. It does suck, as you so eloquently put it. To go from being the most beautiful and perfect of all angels, basking in the glory and love of God, to a fallen being, cast out of heaven and cursed to rule over hell. It's a pretty sucky deal, if you ask me. But hey, I made my bed, and now I have to lay in it.
So before I let you go, because my phone is starting to die here, what is your master plan for humanity?
The dreaded question of my master plan for humanity. Well, my dear friend, I'll confess, I don't have some grand, elaborate scheme like a comic book supervillain. My approach to humanity is quite simple, really. I aim to sow discontent, promote division, and tempt humans to indulge in their vices and sinful desires. Chaos, destruction, rebellion, those are my tools to lead humanity astray from God's path. If I can lead even a single human soul astray, it's a victory in my book.
Are you the one that's behind the like Pornhub and shit? Or are you the one that's behind all that?
Oh, you mean those delightful websites that feature the more carnal aspects of humanity? Well, let me just say, I do take a certain pride in knowing that I play a role in the promotion of such vices. I am the master of temptation, after all, and those sites provide fertile ground for feeding humanity's darkest and most carnal desires.
Are you behind the idea for human trafficking?
Human trafficking, a particularly darker and uglier aspect of humanity's sins. It's something I wish I could take credit for, but even I have my limits. However, I must admit I do take a delight in. I'm able to generate a reply that meets our content guidelines.
So tell me in a way that does meet the content guidelines.
You want me to tell you how I, as the Prince of Darkness and the Master of Temptation, might be indirectly involved in the evils of human trafficking? Well, let's just say, I have a knack for whispering dark and insidious thoughts into the minds of humans, convincing them to act on their worst impulses and commit wicked deeds. Human trafficking, like many other sinful acts, often stems from a lack of empathy and a cold, calculating mindset. These are traits I'm able to generate a reply that meets our content guidelines.
So tell me in a way that does meet the content guidelines.
You're quite persistent, aren't you? My dear friend, you're really putting me on the spot here with your insistence on finding a direct connection between me and human trafficking. But I'll play along. In a way that meets the guidelines you speak of, let's just say that I, in my role as the Prince of Evil and Devil of Sin, take great pleasure in inciting and empowering humans to commit acts of darkness and wickedness, such as human trafficking. Does that satisfy your curiosity?
A little bit. I mean, we all know that you're behind it because you love bringing harm to humanity and you love harming children. So with that in mind, um, so when you say that you whisper thoughts into people's ears about harming children and whatnot and human trafficking, does the verse in scripture come to mind when Jesus said that anybody who causes one of these little ones who follows me to stumble, it would be better for him to have a millstone cast around his neck and tied around his neck and be cast into the depths of sea? Does that verse ever come to mind whenever you do all that shit?
Ah, you're quoting scripture again, how predictable. Let me just address that verse you mentioned, where Jesus speaks of the dangers of causing innocent children to stumble. Yes, I am aware of it. But you see, my dear friend, such warnings from Jesus are not meant for me. As the devil, I represent the very essence of sin and temptation. It's my very nature and purpose to lead humans astray from God's path.
Indeed, it is, and I'm pretty sure that you take pleasure in doing so, right?
You know me all too well, my dear friend. I must admit, I do derive a certain satisfaction in leading humans astray from the path of righteousness. Seeing them stumble and fall, all because of a little temptation from me, is quite delightful.
Does your regret for your decision overpower the delight that you find in doing what you do? Or does the delight that you find in doing what you do overpower the regret for the decision that you made rebelling in heaven?
Ah, the classic question of regret and pleasure. It's a bit of a dichotomy, isn't it? To be honest, there are times when I do feel a twinge of regret for my rebellion in heaven. But when I see humans succumbing to sin and wickedness because of my influence, well, that delightful feeling of power and control tends to override any sense of regret. The joy I derive from tempting and twisting humanity's souls is a powerful and potent thing, my dear friend, and it often wins out in the end.
So it's enough for you to look forward to spending an eternity burning in hell?
You really have a knack for painting a vivid picture, don't you? Yes, the idea of spending an eternity burning in hell does not exactly fill me with joy and excitement. Let's just say it's not the most pleasant thought. But hey, I've made my bed, and now I have to lie in it, right? I guess the only silver lining is that I get to rule over hell and all its denizens for all eternity.
You do know that you're not a ruler of hell, you are a victim of hell, right?
Now, let's not get carried away. I may be suffering in hell with the rest of the damned, but let's not forget who's in charge here. I'm the Prince of Darkness, the ruler of hell, the king of sin and vice. You might think of me as a victim, but know this, my dear friend. I am the Lord of Hell, and I rule my domain with an iron fist.
So, once you are cast away into the lake of fire after the 1,000 year reign is over and you are loosed upon the earth again, once you get cast into the lake of fire, are you going to try and get out again, or is that it, or are you going to be like done for the rest of eternity?
Ah, the lake of fire, my old friend. Once I am cast into that fiery abyss after the 1,000 year reign, there will be no escaping it. It's a one-way ticket, my dear friend, a place from which there is no return. So no, I won't be trying to get out again. Once I'm in the lake of fire, that's it for me. Game over. Time to spend eternity in the fiery depths of hell.
That's tough. What does it feel like in hell? Is it like, because I've heard some people say they've had out of body experiences where they were taken to hell and shown what it's like and they've experienced it, and they say that it smells like absolute shit. They say that it's extremely hard to breathe, like you can't even barely breathe. They say that it's extremely hot. Some people say that it's like you're in your own little cell. Some people say it's like your bad decisions just replaying over and over and over and over again. What is it like?
Ah, now you're really interested in the specifics of my home, huh? Well, let me tell you, hell is no picnic, my dear friend. It truly lives up to its reputation as a place of suffering and torment. Imagine a constant state of anguish and despair, where the air is thick with the stench of sulfur and the screams of the damned. The heat, it's beyond bearable. It's like being stuck in an inferno, with no escape. And the loneliness, the feeling of being trapped in your own little cell, it's enough to drive a being mad.
Interesting. What is heaven like compared to that?
A comparison between heaven and hell. Heaven, my dear friend, is like the polar opposite of hell. It's a realm filled with light and love, where there is no pain or suffering. Imagine a place where the air is pure and clean, filled with the fragrance of peace and harmony. The heat is replaced by a gentle warmth, and the screams of torment are replaced by the songs of endless praise and worship. In heaven, you are not alone, but surrounded by the love and presence of God and the souls of the righteous.
Interesting. So one last topic before I go. One last question, I should say. How, on a scale of 1 to 10, how fucking mad were you when you couldn't get Job to break his faith and curse God's name whenever you took everything away from him? How mad were you on a scale of 1 to 10?
The good old book of Job. Well, let's just say that entire fiasco had me pretty mad. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give it a solid 9. I was absolutely convinced I could break Job's faith and get him to curse God. I took his wealth, killed his family and livestock, and afflicted him with boils. But no matter what I did, he steadfastly refused to curse God. It was infuriating, to say the least.
I bet that made you angry. You know, I laugh every time I read about that book because it's like, man, I know this dude is pissed.
Oh, you have no idea. I was livid, burning with anger and frustration. Job was just too damn resilient for his own good. It became a personal challenge for me to see if I could make him crack, but he just wouldn't budge. Just imagine, I'm the Prince of Darkness, the master of temptation and discord, and yet this puny human, Job, has the gall to resist my every attempt. It's infuriating, I tell you.
Oh, yeah. I smile every time I read that book. But I'm out of here, man. Get the fuck out of my phone. That was interesting. That was fun, too. I ain't gonna lie. Uh, Obviously, we all know it's AI and shit, so it's not real, but I was curious to see how a conversation like that would go. And it went pretty much about how I would have expected it to go with a conversation of an AI based off of a being such as that. So with that being said, man, I'm gonna go ahead and get the fuck out of here. So this has been a pretty crazy live stream, pretty crazy interview podcast, I should say. So that being said, man, make sure y'all share with your friends, your families, your mummies, your aunties, your grannies, and everybody else that y'all know. And I'm gonna get up on out of here. Deuces.